Hello everyone, this class is about the cultural dimension of public management. So today I'm going to briefly explain chapter 6, public management based on the cultural dimension, and as well as two different articles which are very short one. The whose public management by numbers as a performance enhancing drug, and Professor Jennings and Kentucky. Organization culture and effects of performance measurement. So basic concept, what the meaning of the culture. So basically culture is one of the three dimensions of public management. So it is defined as it is the informal aspects of organization. So it includes the values, beliefs, ethics, or sometimes mottos, individual participants shares beliefs, and in addition to shares norm embedded in the public organization or understanding broadly characterized in the public organization or subject, something like that. So according to the author, the culture means that informal aspects of organization individual things. So again, values, beliefs, and ethics and motives of the individual participants to the shared norm and understanding the broadly characteristic of the organization and its subunits. So definition, trivial aspects of contemporary organizations. It means sometimes the way we do things around here, or there's some persistent patterns way of thinking from the stakeholders and insider of the organization. So most specifically, there are some more detail. According to these two authors, the two scholars, they mentioned that there are two specific aspects of aligning organizational culture. First one is substance, which consists of shared system of belief, values, and norms. The other one is about the forms, which are observable ways that members of a culture express cultural ideas in the organization. So, of course, there are subcultures inside the culture. There are some informal groups and formal groups within the organization, and also we can think about the managerial culture broadly, or a demographic group. They have some particular culture their own, something like that. So again, culture is very informal thing, so it is not written down in most cases. So it is not easily identifiable and is often only known to individuals within the organization. So organizations tend to assimilate new members to their culture, and those members who fail to assimilate often by themselves may be very uncomfortable in the organization and seek employment elsewhere. So, which means the cultural dimension is very powerful and should not be overlooked, of course, in practice. And also, there are some different aspects representing organizational culture, which can be defined as institutional value. So usually institutionalization means that the process by which the members of an organization acquire values that go beyond the technical requirements of an organizational tasks, or the emergence of orderly, stable, socially integrating patterns out of unstable, loosely organized, or narrowly technical activities. So again, the culture dimension can be, revised or created by institutions. So March and Olson, these famous two scholars, mentioned that institutions can be intertwined with the cultural dimension. So because the institutions includes the concept of the beliefs, paradigms, and codes and cultures, of course, and knowledge that supports rule and routines. So organization participants seek to act in ways consistent with their institutional environments. So in other words, culture may affect organization and organizational performance. And also organizational setting can change the culture. So both as creator and creator dichotomy in that context, we can think about that the public manager create up the culture in the organization, or based on given the institutional value embedded in the organization, they may be changed their decision making or actions according to their own culture. So which means they can be constrained by the culture. So from the different ways we can think about the culture, how the culture works in the public sector. So cultures, again, the shared experience and shared norms. So from this concept, culture can affect public organization or public employees like this. Explicitly or implicitly shape the ingrained views and habitual behavior works, or it can work like the infuse employees with beliefs and values that enhance the organization reputation, or it can work like produce a set of dysfunctional and unproductive responses that harm the organization's reputation, or sometimes it can work like provide a unifying sources of meaning and purpose that formal structure of authority and assignments of responsibility cannot alone provide. So at large, we can think about this way. The culture determines the actions that we can take. It establishes thresholds for accountability or acceptability in the organization. So again, management can be constrained by culture, and in this, managers as a creator or creator, they can affect organizational culture or they can be burdened by the culture. So usually managerial leaders can be a creator, so their organizational culture can be changed depending on their decision. So again, that can result in organizational change in a big picture. So next, the culture in historical perspectives. There are some historical perspective representing this definition of the culture. At the earlier stage of PA field, there are some scholars mentioned that related to the culture. They mentioned that, for example, Bernard in 1938, he mentioned that organizational context in which to consider how the value and ingrained norms of workers influence organizational behavior, which can be related to the concept of culture. And also, this is the famous study called Wholesome study. I'm sure some of you may be familiar with this concept. So in this study, informal organization was frustrated by the achievement of goals because they didn't consider the human size, cultural size in this study, and also Simon's administrative behavior. He mentioned that there are informal organizations in the public sector, of course, so which can be defined as the interpersonal relationship in the organization that affect decisions within it, but either are omitted from the formal one or not consistent with the scheme, the formal concept again. And since 1950s, there are some different perspective about the culture, and you can read the detail in the textbook by yourself. And after in 1977 and 1938, there were one big theoretical perspective came. The name the new institutionalism. This is one of the famous theories in public economic and public management field. So based on the original institutionalism, but this is a little bit different. So new institutionalism, according to this theory, the basic concept is that the institution can affect people's behavior. So again, usually people are very self-interested, opportunistic animal. So based on the institution can affect, constrain their such opportunistic behavior. So which means people, action and decision making can be constrained by the institution, or they can change their actions according to the institution. This is the basic concept. So I usually use this concept for my paper, elected government versus the appointed government. But usually it was widely observed that under elected government, so people can be constrained by the institution, which means the election. So their actions more changed become in favor of the citizens' needs. So this is the main concept. So under this theory, the scholar said this transcends the division of organizations into formal and informal dimensions on the cultural basis of all organizational structure and actions. So again, the culture can affect the public organization or public manager's action and decision making. And next, in 70s and 80s, there are some emerging concepts regarding Asian economics. So based on, in Western society, including United States and Western Europe or Canada, we have a very individualistic society, right? So which focused on the individual success or individual performance or individual actions. But on the other hand, Asian society tend to be much more collectivist, compared to the individual society. So they focus on the group, the family, as rule the smallest unit of analysis, as everything is down for the betterment of the group and betterment of the society. So we have some collectivist culture. So we may think those of things. So maybe we can think about those kind of concept can be one of the dimension of the cultural things. Just family union and better for society, something like that. And then since 1980s, there are different concepts came up in PA field. And the Shane, for example, in 1988, he said the organizational culture can be one concept, which has a fairly recount origin, mainly social psychological studies of group norms and organizational climates. But basically, in 1980s, we observed that there are some social movement. So maybe according to the race or according to the economical situation, so they have some very specific shared norm or beliefs among those groups, so they can be one of the dimension of the culture. And according to the author, there are several specific blocks, aspects, sub-aspects representing culture. So we can think about value, ethics, trust, motives, and professional aspects. So based on, as shown in this slide, the culture can consist of several small blocks. So I'm going to explain briefly about the detail. And here, individual characteristic and building blocks of the culture again. So again, individual value, judgment, ethics, and motives. Maybe each employees working in the public-owned organization, or trust, reputation, intertwined with the peer employees. They can be small sub aspects representing culture. So they can affect like this, the decision and behavior of individual in the organization over whom the manager has control. And also they can be related to this concept, the decision and behavior and manager themselves. So these concepts composed of the culture in this picture. And next, there are one specific sub-aspects of the culture, which is values. The values means that the complex, broad-based assessment of an object or set of objects characterized by both cognitive and emotive elements arrived at after some deliberation. So basically, value means like this, but public value specifically, there can be defined as the principles of common value. So you may recall that there are several public values, equity, effectiveness, and how can I accountability, responsibility, or answerness, or public expectation, something like that. So the basic concept of public management is to protect or create public value according to the work covered in the first and second week, I guess. So this is about the values. And next, the more specifically, there are several public values. There are value categories like this and value set like this. So again, I already mentioned the accountability here, and equity can be related to the value, again, the culture, and then political loyalty may be one of the concepts representing culture. And there are some democracy, protection of minorities. Of course, there are one of the big public values in public sector. And also we can think about productivity, maybe related to performance reporting and performance measurement or self-development of employees. And then here cooperation and openness, sometimes they can be related to the one concept of the culture. And second sub-concept is about the professionals. The professional values and norms can be the one of the culture in public sector. They can transcend the culture or norms in specific ways of specific organizational contexts. For example, there are layers and medical doctors. You can think about the professional. They're professional in their position can be their culture, right? And also professionals influence the culture of the organization through their decisions that affect structure in service and technology, which means the culture and structure can be intertwined with each other. And next, there are different concepts named ethics. This is very general concept. Of course, ethics are rules of conduct and behavior, which related to the question of right or wrong, good and evil. So the ethics of individuals in the public organization can contribute to the cultural dimension, of course. And fourth one is motives. So this means that the psychological constructs used to answer the question, why did she or he or they do that? Because there's some reason, because this is for public interest, this is for citizens, something like that. So obviously there are motives embedded in the public organizations, their program, or their decision making. When you think about that, rational choice theory, basically generally accepted theories in PA field, the main concept is that the peoples are limited bounded rationality. They have limited rationality, and then they are very self-interested animal. But on the other hand, based on the stewardship theory, this is actually widely cited in the non-profit field. Based on this theory, the people and the organizations are very trustworthy ones compared to the rational choice theory. Those things are opposite dimension, opposite concept in terms of the viewing the people or organization. And also public service motivation. This is very, very famous concept. I'm sure some of you may know well. So this can be one of the cultural dimension in public sector. So I'm sure you can read the detail in the text by yourself. And the next, there are trust. This is very, very broad concept. This means that the willingness of a party to be vulnerable to the actions of another party based on the expectation that the other will perform a particular action important to the trusters, irrespective of the ability to monitor or control that the other party. So trust, which is the basis for cooperation, of course, and repeated interaction over time. So that can be one of the actually public values I can say, and also that can be one of the sub-concept of culture. And actually the authors in the text will wrap up the chapter with some case studies, but I'm not willing to go through the detail on this at this point, but I'm sure you should read the detail about the case study because I already make one discussion question about this week's. This is based on the case or examples addressed in the textbook. So next, so last week we learned the structure, organizational structure, right? And today I'm explaining the culture. The thing is these two concepts very intertwined with each other. So basically culture affects the implementation of new structure or mediate the effects of those new structure on output or outcomes. So this is very obvious, right? So, and then again, the structural change, of course, affect the culture. And so both the structure and culture, this type of effects seem to be operating simultaneously, of course. When you record the Moonhyun's article, he already mentioned that these two things are intertwined with each other to affect the public program or affect public employees' actions in the organization. Also, you can record the case of vanishing volunteers regarding the last week's discussion question. So here, think about that the new directors came into the department. So, but the thing is, he changed the program, voluntary program. So after that, the some of volunteers very upset, right? So this is the one of the example how structure affect the organizational culture and how organizational culture affect the structure because based on their sentiments, the new department or I'm sorry, the new director should make something in response to the change. So, for example, when you think about her possible strategy and policies to be needed, maybe she should create some channels for communication and understanding. Basically, in the context of the shared norm and values and beliefs. Of course, this is related to the concept of culture. So maybe she can think about some sessions of collaborative fact finding or problem solving, or she can create a team or committee, including a new director by herself and volunteers and commissioners and some staff to establish the new guideline or managerial strategies. So again, it's a participatory management. I mean, building a new culture can overcome those kind of the structural changes or environmental shock. Or she can think about decentralizing decision making. She can make some representative of the volunteers, right, to reflect their opinion to the program, or she can make some job enrichment program to develop volunteers' careers and skills, or she can think about the privatization and contracting out. Maybe that can be related to structural change, or she can try to hold a network of friends by using annual ceremony with testimonial, rewarding, and bargaining or psychological support, which means making building trust. And then also she can think about the institutionalization. May we call the institutional values was one of the concept of the culture. So basically based on the institutional audience or some law or policy, so she can change their culture over time. This is the one of the example how the structure and culture can be intertwined each other. And next, there are another concept about the organizational learning. This is basically I remembered that the Moonhyun's article last week, he covered this concept, organizational learning, in his paper. So basically, the definition of the organizational learning is about the detection and correction of error. So there are two different types of organizational learning. First one is single loop learning, and second one is double loop learning. Basically, double loop learning is better because they can respond to detected error task, the form of joint inquiry into the organizational norms themselves, so as to resolve their inconsistency and make the new norms more effectively realizable, which means the basically engaging all the people, maybe two-way communication or based on the trust or culture, they can make some better organization or better organization performance. So this is double loop learning stand for in the context of the culture. And next, this is very similar to the previous slide, so I'm sure you can easily understand by yourself, and I'm going to skip these slides. And next, there are craft and culture. We are going to cover next week about the craft dimension. So again, the basic concept is the same. The craft and culture are very interrelated to each other. So there are in public organization, basically there are one leaders or several leaders. So those leadership roles, again, they can be related to the craft dimension, of course, and then they affect some organizational culture in some ways. So Shane, one scholar, he mentioned that leaders create and change the organizational culture. On the other hand, managers and administrators live within them. So again, these two concepts are very related to each other, and there are some different ways to influence culture, organizational missions, and goals. So when you think about the non-profit, basically they are widely engaged in social and health services in our society, right? So those concepts, mission, and goals can be related to their culture. So of course, based on their culture, their action and decision making and program may be determined. So this is what stands for these both things, craft and culture work together. And next, I'm going to briefly explain the brief concept of two articles. Historically, when you think about the new public management in 1960s and 70s, one of the focuses is about the performance measurement. But the thing is, there are one caveat like this: public management by numbers only based on the quantitative value can minimize the statistical validity and reliability of performance numbers for public services. So when you think about just general example, when you think about that, when you writing your dissertation right now, when you do only based on the survey or using objective data, empirical data to make to reflect your hypothesis, but the thing is they have some limited observation, of course, because we don't know the behind the number, the detail, we don't know it. So that's why we usually do the mixed method approach using the interviews or focus group interviews or contents analysis of related documents. So to make more, visible and reliable evidence, we need both concepts. So public management should be based on the numbers as well as the invisible things. So this is the basic concept related to this performance enhancing efforts. So according to the author, there are two different hypotheses like this. The performance enhancing efforts of management by numbers will depends on whether the number are used for the purposes of targets, ranking, and intelligence. So again, these three concepts affect the public management and its progress. And second one is about the performance enhancing efforts of those three applications. Gain targets, ranking, and intelligence will vary according to the culture. So again, based on the culture, these things effects can be changed. But the thing is underlying concept is there are different groups, society aspects like hierarchical, egalitarian, and individual or fatalistic settings. So this is a basic hypothesis according to the author. And next, there are some examples of PM, public management by numbers. Of course, there are targets and ranking and intelligence. So according to this, there are some examples to measure the outcomes and performance of the public program or policy. So I'm not sure you can read this, but I'm sure you can read this by yourself, the article, because they are table 1, because I just copy and paste the table 1 here. And next, there are performance enhancing efforts. So according to the author, the performance may well be improved if the egalitarianism, can be mixed with the elements of hierarchism and individualism. So this is because the elements of the hierarchism can help facilitate management or policy intervention based on the intelligence, but on the other hand, egalitarian systems are often prone to deadlock or browsing. So, and elements of individualism can help counter group thinking, right? because those two things are very opposite way. But the concept will make more of reality of users' choices made on the basis of analysis of performance numbers. So maybe targets are unlikely to be effective when it is hard to fix on a few key priorities or mobilize collective effort to reach them. Ranking are unlikely to be ineffective. Rankings are unlikely to be effective either when rivalry or competition is somehow aligned or in a setting that is so competitive that sabotage and gaming will be readily resorted to it. Or intelligence is unlikely to be effective, when there are no real willingness to pull information or to use the power of groups to interpret it. So again, this concept is not unlikely to be effective by itself, by alone. So again, those things can be intertwined each other to enhance performance in the public sector. So public performance and outcomes are a function of managerial purposes for the number are used interacting with the relevant culture. Again, culture is one of the important factors affecting performance and performance organization outcome. So again, none of these three forms, target, ranking, and intelligence, are not effective by themselves. So the things here, one of the strategies as author suggests that there needs some hybrid elements. Three things should be intertwined. So maybe you can think about the qualitative values, or you can use the evidence-based approach generally accepted in this class. So only using quantitative value is problematic. That's the main concept. So again, culture can be related to the performance measurement here, because the different forms of measurement create different incentives for actors, so that culture obviously affects their reaction of those incentives. So again, they can be related to culture, craft, and structure concept. These three things can be intertwined each other. So not all cultures will be equally supportive for performance orientation that enhance the effect of performance measurement. So individual culture or collectivist culture or egalitarian culture or some fatalist culture is not be effective by themselves. Okay, so some combination of the culture is needed. So the impact of performance measurement depending on the organization culture again in which it is implemented, and it depends on whether agency staff have internalized inside the organization a set of norms and behaviors that supports the performance orientation. So in response to the complex, today's uncertain environments, we need to know that organization should be changed in response to these attacks and shocked. So again, cultural changes and organizational changes along with the craft change are needed. So it will be helpful to guide the development of strategy. Means that again the main concept is the three concepts are intertwined, and also we need to pay attention to the invisible qualitative value beyond the mere numbers and quantitative value to get better outcomes and better performance of organization. So discussion question is here. I didn't explain the detail of the chapter 6. I need you read chapter 6 very carefully by yourself and then answer this question. How would you briefly explain the culture matters in public management and performance? So I need you use one or at least two cases or examples, specific cases addressed in chapter 6 to support your idea. Thank you.